Coast Guard buoys measured large-scale disturbances in the waters, and sonar reports kept coming in. Only something extremely heavy dropping down into the ocean could cause this, and Captain Izzy Barkley's team was tasked with investigating the tremors. The buoy that detected the most tremors was about 20 miles from shore. When Izzy and her team arrived at the scene, they got straight to work. Izzy was also the main researcher, so it was customary for her to dive down first. She ascended and saw their target after just a couple of minutes. There was a massive shipping container present at the bottom of the ocean, and it was obvious that Izzy could not lift the metal object out of the water with her bare hands. So when Izzy resurfaced, she quickly ordered the ship's diving robot to take over. "Let's get it onto our boat," she demanded. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for more amazing stories. Luckily, they didn't just leave their research facility with just any vessel. No, their ship had high-end equipment, which Izzy was qualified to use. So with Izzy's orders in place, her colleagues prepared the drone to delve down deep. But nobody was ready for the bizarre discovery that was about to be made. As the drone was lowered into the water, Izzy took over the controls, and the exciting part of this mission could commence. The water was calm and clear, making it easy to navigate toward the container at the bottom. But reaching the object would not turn out to be the tricky part. Once the vessel was reached, it was time for the machine to start lifting. It attached its extending claws around the container's sides. From that point on, the ship simply had to pull in the robot. But this turned out to be more difficult than expected. The container was unexpectedly heavy. Their ship's crane was capable of lifting massive objects. But somehow, this simple shipping container made their machine work extremely hard for it. The entire boat rocked back and forth and even took on some water while lifting the metal box out of the water. "What the hell is in there?" Izzy said. With much effort and a few nervous faces, they eventually managed to lift the mysterious container out of the water. With a loud bang, it landed on the deck of their ship, and the entire crew immediately rushed in to inspect the exciting find. What is it? Why is it here? And what is inside? Izzy's co-workers might have been excited. However, the one who was truly intrigued was Izzy herself, because she noticed something that alluded to her colleagues. A shipping container wasn't usually watertight, so when lifted off the ocean floor, one might expect water to leak out of every hole, but somehow that wasn't the case here. Somehow, this plain-looking shipping container was insulated, like it was designed to keep every drop of water out. But why was that? The team's deck workers, who formed the crew's muscle, had already started pulling on the door handle. With a large bolt cutter, the main lock on the container was cut off, and afterward, the door's handles were pulled aside. Slowly but surely, the container doors swung open. Izzy took a step back to look at the container as a whole and shook her head. She was absolutely speechless. The inside of the container was fully furnished. There was a bed, couch, closet, and table with chairs. It had everything any regular household had. "Has any of you ever seen anything like this?" Izzy asked her colleagues, but everyone in the group shared the same disbelief and confusion about the bizarre finding. There were many questions. Where did this come from? Who would live like this and why? It didn't take long for the group to start investigating. Izzy was surprised not only by the fact that the container was fully furnished, but also by the fact that everything was still somewhat in place. They quickly discovered that everything was nailed to the floor. However, some loose items were scattered on the ground, and they found photos of a man and his family. Did he or they live in the container? Who were they, and what happened? They continued the search to find answers to those questions. They searched every inch of the container but didn't find anything that got them closer to the truth. Izzy let out a frustrated sigh and was about to give up when one of Izzy's colleagues suddenly let out an excited yell. When she turned around, she could see him holding up a plastic Ziploc bag, but what sparked his excitement was what was inside it, some sort of recorder. This was a good indication, and she pressed play with good faith. It was a male voice, probably from the man in the pictures. This was great. It was hard to understand the recording out in the middle of the ocean, so the group quickly moved inside. At first, it was mostly background noise, but then the voice sounded clear. "I need to record this before they notice we are here and capture us," it responded to someone in the background. There was a short silence, and then the man cleared his throat and introduced himself as Ahmed Osman. "I hope someone will find the container and this recording and is able to help. We are in desperate need of assistance. We are on the Evercargo Voyager, but I don't know for how long. Please, Save us." The tone of the man got more and more desperate. Then the recorder stopped again. Izzy tried to get it to work again, but her efforts were futile. It was broken. The room fell silent. They were all speechless. Everybody realized something terrible had happened to the people the container belonged to, but what exactly, and could they help them? Then Izzy remembered something. The ship had been sighted multiple times, but only seemed to dock for a short while each time. It only refueled and moved minimal cargo, even though it was filled with containers. Izzy reviewed the log database again, hoping to find more information about the vessel. She exclaimed when she noticed its last seen location. It's closed. The weird reports in the log database and the ominous recording were enough for Izzy to try to track down the ship. The location the vessel was last seen wasn't too far away, so they could be there soon. And if they interpreted the man in the recording correctly, time was of the essence. Izzy ensured everyone aboard was on the same page and was happy to see everyone share her concern about the situation. She gave the captain the coordinates of the ship's last known location. Once they arrived, they were surprised to see the vessel floating 20 km from the coast. It was just lying there. Even though Izzy and her colleagues were curious to find out what was happening, they were also anxious to get close. The recording sounded very menacing, and they agreed that this wasn't just a job for them. They needed help. "I will signal the Coast Guard and police," Izzy said resolutely. Izzy ensured that when the Coast Guard arrived with the police, they were out of the cargo ship's line of sight. Once the officers were aboard, she quickly explained the situation and told them what they had heard on the recording. She was relieved that the police believed her and took it very seriously. Meanwhile, the captain gave orders to his workers, and there was a lot of activity on the ship. They had been waiting for half an hour when they got their response. The workers on the ship let down a ladder so the trio could climb aboard. The captain greeted them gruffly when they were finally up on the deck. "You have 1 hour," he said, after which he ordered everyone back to work. Izzy smiled and tried her best to act like she was making recordings. Izzy and the officers walked over the ship, trying to discover what was going on while acting as inconspicuously as possible. But there was nothing that indicated anything was wrong. They probably used the last half hour to conceal any evidence. Out of desperation, Izzy started to whisper the man's name. "Ahmed Osman, are you here?" she repeated a few times as the trio walked between multiple containers. Then, suddenly, one of the containers beside them opened up, and they were pulled inside, after which the door closed again. The trio was surprised to see that the container was filled with people. But the container wasn't only filled with people. This one was furnished like the container they had pulled out of the ocean. "Who are you?" a man demanded. Izzy immediately recognized him from the pictures and the recording. She stepped forward and explained who they were and that they found his recording. Ahmed's expression immediately cleared up. "I can't believe it. I hoped it would get found, but I didn't actually think it would be." The man rambled. He shook their hands excitedly and let out a sigh of relief. "This is our chance to get off this horrible ship," he said to the others. Ahmed explained that he and all the others were looking for passage to a safe country. He heard rumors about a ship taking people aboard and doing just that. But once he was on board, things changed. "In return for the journey, I had to work on the ship for 1 year, but they kept extending that period, never letting me get ashore," Ahmed explained. "I've been here for 2 years, but some of these people have lived here much longer." Everyone lived inside containers like this, and the captain and crew exploited them. The conditions were horrible, and the endless labor caused him to rebel. But the crew quickly found out I was the reason behind the uprising and took drastic measures to stop at Ahmed's side. He explained they threw his container overboard, removing and destroying his home in the process. But before they could, he was able to hide a message inside, hoping someone would find it. The ship was filled with families who were exploited and falsely imprisoned. They had to do something about it, and fast. Now that the police knew what was going on, they took action. They asked Ahmed how many crew members the ship had and if they could put up much of a fight. Backup was called once they had a complete picture, and a surprise raid was planned. And it worked to perfection. Due to the surprise attack, the ship's crew was quickly arrested. With the criminals were in custody, the Coast Guard took control of the ship. Meanwhile, Izzy helped Ahmed free all the families, and not much later the boat docked at the nearest city. There, an emergency shelter was put up to care for the victims. It didn't take long for the media to pick up the story. It became a nationwide story, and Izzy followed it closely as she returned home after the city took control of the support. She was glad to see the situation had a good outcome and incredibly happy she played a part in it.